If you were to ask a group of League players their opinions of Yasuo, you'd be bound to get some pretty radically different answers. Enthusiasts might praise his samurai western styling with a pinch of added airbending for extra pizzazz. They might also claim that he's a high difficulty character, but this makes for more fun and rewarding gameplay because of it. However, those less fond of the champion would be quick to point out that our Yasuo is often the enemy team's best player, and just wish that Windwall would stop blocking every fucking ability that they use. But what if I told you that fighting games are made to be head-to-head battles where two players duke it out 1 versus 1, so if your Yasuo is feeding, that's your fault and you should feel bad. And just because one aspect of him might be broken in his mobile form, it doesn't mean the same would be so for an entirely different game genre. So let's take a few minutes to break down and tweak his kit for projectl in a way that may just be able to please those fond of his current play in League, while also satisfying players slightly less enthusiastic about the character. To start things off is Yasuo's passive Way of the Wanderer. In League, Yasuo's critical strike chance is increased. Additionally, he builds towards a damage shield whenever he's moving that triggers when he takes damage from a champion or monster. So right off the bat, we see the first of several abilities that need to fit some sort of prerequisite before it gets online. And this is where I would pitch a pretty fundamental shift on how Yasuo accesses these abilities. For his wind shield, rather than passively triggering based on movement then being attacked, I would make this wind meter a universal resource to a few of Yasuo's stronger abilities, allowing him to manually activate this shield, give him access to new air movement options to fit his wind theme, and access some of his other key abilities at will. One of the ways that he can build this meter is by running, just like his League counterpart, and for the actual windshield activation, make it able to nullify one attack as a parry, but also when spinning this precious meter to block a projectile, allow him to reflect it back to his opponent. But of course, more on projectile defense soon. Moving on to Yasuo's Q brings us Steel Tempest. Yasuo thrusts forward, damaging all enemies in a line. It also grants a stack of Gathering Storm, and at 2 stacks, Steel Tempest fires a whirlwind projectile that knocks enemies airborne. The forward slash is an excellent way to poke down your opponent from afar, while again having another unique method of building to a new ability, with these Gathering Storm stacks paying off with his launching whirlwind projectile. So for the projectile version, let's break this one up into a few separate pieces. First, for the forward slash, make it function more as a command normal to poke your enemy from afar, and of course rather than stacking Gathering Storm, have it build the newly established wind meter. Secondly, give him a smaller whirlwind to act as a standard fireball that he can use freely whenever he wants to. And lastly, grant the big payoff of burning his entire wind meter to launch the full tornado version of Whirlwind that could lock an opponent down if blocking to give you a chance to try to open them up, or launch them airborne on hit for a combo or familiar follow-up. Coming up next, we've got his notorious W, Wind Wall. Yasuo creates a moving wall that blocks all enemy projectiles for 4 seconds. It's an amazing way to stop ranged pokes, CC attempts, and flat out counter entire champion kits. Frankly, it's pretty busted in League. But honestly, it's not that crazy for a fighting game tool. In fact, fighting games have a lot of the opposite opinion where many players hate projectile spamming, so the idea of abilities to get around zoning are pretty commonplace in character movesets these days. My only real changes would be to increase the distance that the wall actually travels forward, but at the cost of the duration being much shorter. So Yasuo could cast Wind Wall forward to block a quick fireball or two, and this could be a way to cover his dash-in approach. Plus, whenever he blocks a projectile, it could feed into his wind meter as well. Speaking of dash-ins, that brings us to E, Sweeping Blade. Yasuo dashes through a target enemy, dealing magic damage as he passes them. He can also use Steel Tempest while dashing to quickly strike his opponent again. This is of course his gap closer to snap to opposing champions and even tack on Steel Tempest for some extra damage. But another large portion of Sweeping Blade's use is for its mobility due to being able to use it on minions as well. So for this one, I think we actually lean more on that mobility side by converting Sweeping Blade into a command dash that Yasuo can use independently rather than just as an attack. We allow him to reactivate the dash on impact to slash his opponent's head on, and finally allow him to activate it in close proximity to his opponent, then use Steel Tempest to dash behind them and try to mix them up with a cross-up. Now to turn briefly into Ruined King, I think we can borrow a few things here too. First, utilizing Raging Wind as a multi-hitting combo filler that you could convert into after hitting with a normal attack. and then have his first ultimate Storm Strike to act as a lower damaging level 1 super to end combos on grounded opponents. Which of course brings us to the big finale, Yasuo's R and ultimate ability, Last Breath. Yasuo blinks to an airborne enemy champion, dealing physical damage and holding all enemies in the air while he attacks with a flurry of slashes. For this one, I want it to be the big show-stopping ender doing massive amounts of damage, but as with League, we'll need some setting up first to earn that big payoff. First, of course, as with LoL, you'll need to be airborne to use this ability, so you need to either launch your opponent via conventional means or as the obvious full whirlwind follow-up, then cash out a full super bar to reap the rewards of this devastating aerial assault. But that's going to do it for my pitch for Yasuo. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of it and what other ideas you might have for the character. Thanks so much as always for watching, and catch you on the next video.